Part 1. The Haunting. The halls of Higashi High School echoed with the chatter of students as they hurried to their next class. Among them was Hina Karuizawa, a timid freshman with a penchant for the supernatural. Ever since she could remember, Hina had been fascinated by ghost stories and paranormal legends, drawn to the mysterious and the unknown like a moth to a flame. As she made her way through the crowded corridors, Hina couldn't shake the feeling of unease that gnawed at her insides. It was as if something was watching her, lurking just beyond the edges of her vision, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. With a shiver, Hina pushed the thought aside and focused on reaching her next class on time. But as she turned the corner, she froze, her heart skipping a beat as she caught sight of a figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was a girl, her features obscured by long, dark hair that hung in tangled strands around her face. Hina felt a chill run down her spine as she watched the girl, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Hey, are you okay?" Hina called out, her voice trembling with uncertainty. But the girl didn't respond, her form wavering like a mirage in the distance. With a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach, Hina took a step forward, her curiosity getting the better of her. But before she could get any closer, the girl vanished into thin air, leaving Hina standing alone in the empty hallway. Shaken but determined, Hina brushed off the encounter as a trick of the light and continued on her way. But as the day wore on, strange things began to happen. Objects would go missing from her locker. Strange noises would echo through the halls late at night, and Hina couldn't shake the feeling of being watched wherever she went. Desperate for answers, Hina turned to her grandmother, a wise old woman with a deep knowledge of Japanese folklore and superstition. Sitting at the kitchen table, Hina listened intently as her grandmother recounted tales of spirits and demons that roamed the earth, seeking to wreak havoc on the living. "And then there's Hanako-san," her grandmother said, her voice low and somber. "A vengeful spirit said to haunt the bathrooms of schools across Japan, waiting to drag unsuspecting victims into the depths of the underworld." Hina's blood ran cold as she listened to her grandmother's words, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place in her mind. The figure she had seen in the hallway, the strange occurrences at school, it all pointed to one thing. Hanako-san had chosen her as her next victim. Determined to uncover the truth, Hina set out to investigate the legend of Hanako-san, scouring the internet for information and talking to other students who claimed to have encountered the spirit. But the more she learned, the more terrified she became, realizing that she was in way over her head. As night fell and the school grew silent, Hina found herself drawn to the girls' bathroom on the third floor, the rumored haunt of Hanako-san herself. With trembling hands, she pushed open the door and stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest with fear and anticipation. The air was thick with tension as Hina made her way to the last stall, her footsteps echoing in the empty room like a death knell. With a deep breath to steady her nerves, she pushed open the door and peered inside, half expecting to come face to face with the vengeful spirit herself. But the stall was empty, the only sound the gentle drip 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 of a leaky faucet in the corner. Hina let out a sigh of relief, her shoulders sagging with the weight of her fear. Just then a voice echoed through the darkness, chilling Hina to the bone. "You shouldn't have come here, Hina Karuizawa," it whispered, the words sending a shiver down her spine. Hina spun around, her eyes wide with terror as she searched for the source of the voice. And then she saw her, a girl standing in the doorway, her features obscured by long, dark hair that hung in tangled strands around her face. It was Hanako-san, the vengeful spirit of Japanese legend, and she had come for Hina. With a scream of terror, Hina turned and ran, her heart pounding in her chest as she fled from the bathroom and into the empty halls of the school. But no matter how fast she ran, Hina couldn't escape the feeling of dread that clung to her like a shadow. Hanako-san was coming for her, and there was nowhere left to hide. Part 2. The Despair. Hina's heart hammered in her chest as she raced through the empty corridors of Higashi High School, her footsteps echoing in the silence like a drumbeat of terror. The memory of Hanako-san's chilling words rang in her ears, spurring her onward as she searched desperately for a way to escape the vengeful spirit's clutches. But no matter which direction she turned, Hina found herself met with nothing but dead ends and locked doors. Panic surged through her veins, threatening to overwhelm her as she realized that she was trapped, with nowhere left to run. With a sob of despair, Hina sank to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she struggled to catch her breath. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched at her chest, her mind reeling with fear and uncertainty. But even in the depths of her despair, Hina refused to give up hope. With a fierce determination burning in her eyes, she forced herself to her feet and pressed on, determined to find a way out of this nightmare and back to safety. As she rounded a corner, Hina's heart skipped a beat as she caught sight of a faint glimmer of light in the distance. With renewed hope surging through her veins, she raced toward it, her footsteps echoing in the empty halls as she drew closer and closer to the source. But as she reached the end of the hallway, Hina's hope turned to horror as she realized the true nature of the light. It was emanating from the girl's bathroom, the very place where she had encountered Hanako-san just moments before. With a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach, Hina hesitated, her mind racing with fear and uncertainty. But she knew that she had no other choice. She had to face her fears head-on if she ever hoped to escape the clutches of the vengeful spirit. Summoning every ounce of courage she had left, Hina pushed open the door and stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest as she braced herself for whatever horrors awaited her within. The air was thick with tension as Hina made her way to the last stall, her footsteps echoing in the empty room like a death knell. With trembling hands, she pushed open the door and peered inside, half expecting to come face to face with Hanako-san herself. But the stall was empty, the only sound the gentle drip, drip, drip of a leaky faucet in the corner. Hina let out a shaky breath, relief flooding through her as she realized that she was alone. Or so she thought. Just then, a low, guttural growl echoed through the darkness, freezing Hina in her tracks. She spun around, her eyes widening in terror as she caught sight of Hanako-san standing in the doorway, her features twisted into a grotesque mask of rage and malice. With a scream of terror, Hina turned and ran, her heart pounding in her chest as she fled from the bathroom and into the empty halls of the school. But no matter how fast she ran, Hanako-san was always right behind her, her ghostly form gliding effortlessly through the darkness like a specter of death. With nowhere left to run, Hina found herself cornered in the empty gymnasium, her back pressed against the cold, unforgiving wall as Hanako-san closed in on her with predatory intent. With a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach, Hina realized that this was the end, that she would never escape the vengeful spirit's clutches. But just as all hope seemed lost, Hina's hand brushed against something cold and metallic, a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall beside her. With a surge of adrenaline, she seized the extinguisher and swung it with all her might, the metal connecting with Hanako-san's ghostly form with a sickening thud. To her surprise, the blow seemed to stagger the vengeful spirit, giving Hina just enough time to scramble to her feet and make a break for the exit. With every ounce of strength she had left, she threw herself through the gymnasium doors and into the safety of the night beyond. But even as she stumbled out into the darkness, Hina knew that the nightmare was far from over, that Hanako-san would continue to haunt her every step until she found a way to banish the vengeful spirit from this world once and for all. With a newfound determination burning in her heart, Hina set out into the night, her mind racing with fear and uncertainty. But no matter what horrors awaited her in the darkness, she knew that she would face them head-on, armed with nothing but her courage and her determination to survive.